I left town for 14 days. When I came back, a woman from the HOA was living inside my house wearing my clothes, drinking my tea, and calling the cops on me for breaking in. That was just the beginning. She stole my dog, tried to burn down my land. And when that didn't work, she forged federal documents to take my property. But I didn't just fight back. I brought the entire HOA down. Where are you watching from ever dealt with a nightmare? HOA, drop a comment below. Some people break into houses to steal. Karen broke in to rearrange my furniture and drink my tea. I've seen some wild things in my 34 years on Earth, but nothing, absolutely nothing prepared me for the sight of Karen from the HOA living in my ranch house like she owned the place. I'm not talking about trespassing. I'm not talking about poking around or checking for snakes. I'm talking hair and rollers, wearing my flannel, sipping Earl Grey, with her purse on my coffee table and her slippers on my damn rug. And my dog Ranger, my loyal four-legged best friend, was sitting next to her like he just joined a cult, wagging, calm, probably bribed with jerky. It happened after I took a 2-week trip to Montana to help my brother settle in with his new baby. I left everything locked, cameras armed, land well posted with no trespassing signs. When I got back to my 20-acre ranch in Texas, I knew something was off. The front gate was unlatched. The chimney puffed smoke like someone had made a fire, and the porch lights were on. I stepped up, rifle case still in my hand, and noticed my own front door slightly ajar. Inside, it smelled like lavender, biscuits, and audacity. She turned to me with the expression of a woman mildly surprised to see her husband home, early from work, not like she was squatting in someone else's damn home. "Oh," she said, without flinching, "I thought you'd be gone longer." I blinked. "What the hell are you doing in my house?" She took a sip of my tea and replied, perfectly calm, "You left the property unattended, according to Section 3(4) of our HOA safety provisions. We have the right to oversee abandoned lots for the well-being of the community. I nearly dropped my keys. I'm not in your damn HOA, Karen." She set the cup down, picked up her phone, and pressed 911. "Yes, operator. A strange man just entered my home and is yelling. I'm frightened. I believe he's dangerous. She called the police on me in my own house. 10 minutes later, 2 patrol cars rolled up. By then, I was sitting on the porch steps like a hostage in my own story, trying to figure out if I was hallucinating or living in a season of Desperate Housewives Texas edition. Karen ran out to greet them like she'd rehearsed the whole thing. Officers. That man threatened me. He broke in and started yelling. I feared for my life. The female officer turned to me. "Sir, can we see some ID?" I handed her my license. "The deed's in that drawer by the door. So is my security cam footage." She nodded to her partner, who stepped inside. Karen was suddenly agitated. "He's got a gun," she shrieked, stepping back. I raised my hands slowly, heart pounding. Check me. I'm not armed." Both officers went tense, holsters unclipped, eyes locked. Let me pause here to say this. I don't care how innocent you are when someone screams "gun" in front of 2 Texas cops. You feel the cold hand of fate wrap around your spine. They searched me. I was clean. The deed was right where I said it would be notarized, stamped, and in my name, Karen. On the other hand, "Do you have any documentation proving you live here?" "Ma'am," the officer asked. Her lips twitched. "I'm on the HOA board," she said. "That's not documentation. That's a personality disorder." Eventually, the officers realized what this was. One leaned toward Karen and said, firmly, "Ma'am, this property is not under your HOA's jurisdiction. You were trespassing, and you falsely reported a crime. That's a Class B misdemeanor under Texas Penal Code, paragraph 37.08. Karen flinched. She tried to argue some vague community safety clause, but the officer had already had enough. "You need to leave now, or we'll detain you, permanently." She stomped inside, grabbed a flower-printed duffel bag, and strutted past me like I'd wronged her. And just before stepping into her Lexus, she hissed, "This isn't over." She wasn't wrong. It wasn't over. Not even close. Because the next week, I got a registered letter claiming the HOA was voting to absorb my land into community grounds due to abandonment and risk. That's when I realized Karen didn't just break into my house, she was trying to steal it. You don't wake up one morning to find someone stealing your property. No, they chip at it. One clipboard, one fine, one HOA letter at a time. Karen had been chipping at mine since the day I moved in. Let's rewind. I'd just inherited the land from my late uncle, 20 acres of hard-earned Texas soil, tucked outside the official boundary of Clear Hollow Estates, the HOA-infested neighborhood a couple lots east. I made it very clear during purchase, I want land where I make the rules. No HOA. My lawyer double-checked the county parcel map. My deed clearly stated, this property does not fall within any homeowners association boundary, nor is it subject to any existing HOA charter. Legally, that meant no Karen, no control, no nonsense, or so I thought. The first time I met her, she smiled like a politician and scanned me like a barcode. Nice barn you've got going up. Did you get that design approved through architectural review? I stared. Excuse me. Oh, I know technically you're outside the lines, she chuckled, pushing her designer sunglasses up. But we like to keep Clear Hollow cohesive. I said nothing. She took that as an invitation to keep talking. Well, we'll see what the committee thinks. That should have been the moment I installed barbed wire and moats. A week later, I got the first letter, typed, sealed, and slipped through my gate. Dear resident, please consider painting your fence a more neutral tone to match the aesthetic values of our shared community. I laughed. Then I tossed it. The next one wasn't so funny. Notice of violation unauthorized livestock on lot number 49. A $250 fine will be applied if issue not resolved within 14 days. My horses. On my land, they weren't just bluffing, they were invoicing. I called the number, got transferred 4 times, finally reached Karen. You can dispute it, but if you're using shared resources, we reserve oversight. What shared resources I asked? Road visibility, emergency access, wildlife corridors. Wildlife corridors. My lawyer drafted a cease and desist, citing Texas Property Code, paragraph 209.2. HOAs may not exercise governance outside of their recorded plat boundaries or exert authority over properties not voluntarily annexed or deed restricted. Karen responded with a new tactic, persistence. She started showing up, first at the gate, then on the driveway, then, casually, on my porch, clipboard in hand, jotting notes like she was Zillow's Grim Reaper. I put up signs, private property, no HOA jurisdiction, no trespassing. She took photos of the signs. I installed security cameras. She walked just outside their range. I caught her trying to place an HOA notice sticker on my mailbox. That's when I called the sheriff. He gave her a warning. She backed off, or so I thought. Fast forward to the present. I'd just thrown Karen out of my house with police help, and I was ready to move on with my life. Until I got a certified letter, the kind with the fancy red, open immediately stamp. Notice of community-level land reclamation, initiated by HOA Board. Vote per Community Covenant Provision 6.2. I stared at it for a full minute. In essence, they were claiming my land had been abandoned and that due to public safety concerns, they had voted to annex it into shared community grounds. They even listed it in the new HOA meeting minutes as pending integration parcel TX876431, currently unmanaged. Unmanaged, my ranch, my gardens, my horse barn. Unmanaged. I called my attorney, livid. He asked one thing, has anyone physically occupied your home while you were away? Yes, Karen, that's bad, he said flatly. They're attempting to establish adverse possession. Now here's where things get dark. There's a doctrine in property law called adverse possession. It's real, it's dangerous. In Texas, under Texas Civil Practice and Remedies Code, paragraph 16, 0 to 81, someone can claim ownership of your property if they use it openly. Do so hostile to your interest. Maintain exclusive, continuous possession for a certain period, usually 10 years. Claim the right to it as their own. Karen was acting like a squatter, with the full backing of an HOA attempting to create false legitimacy through a paper trail and community vote, and her living in my house for 14 days. That was the start of a possession claim. But I had something they didn't: footage, witnesses, legal jurisdiction, and blood in my eyes. I started fighting back. First, I sent copies of every HOA letter, photo, and video to the sheriff's department. Second, I submitted a formal trespass affidavit to the county clerk with Karen's name listed. That meant if she stepped foot on my property again, it became criminal trespass, automatically, no further warnings needed. Third, I replaced all locks, installed 360-dig hardwired cameras, and began logging every interaction. Because I knew one thing: this wasn't Karen acting alone. This was a coordinated, deliberate strategy to steal land, and I was just the next in line. One night, a friend sent me a link. It was a local real estate promo flyer, coming soon. Redstone Hills Phase 2, a luxury HOA development expanding into the serene west side. That west side was me. I printed it out and pinned it on the wall. Underneath, I wrote 3 words: not 1 inch. You can mess with a man's land, his house, his fence, maybe even his pride, but you touch his dog. Now it's war. For a while, I thought I could fight back with logic, with deeds, with county maps, with state law and printed bylaws, but then they touched Ranger, and all bets were off. He was there the night before, tail wagging, sleeping at the foot of my bed like always, but when I woke up the next morning, he was gone. No barking, no paw prints, no broken fence, just silence. I ran the perimeter, screaming his name until my voice cracked, checked every trail cam, every gate, every lock, nothing. And then I got the text: maybe next time, don't mess with Karen. Your dog's somewhere safe, for now. I froze. My hand clenched so tight the phone creaked. They didn't just take my dog, they weaponized him. This wasn't just property harassment anymore. This was personal psychological warfare. I tried calling the number straight to voicemail. Then I fired off messages. Where is he? You have no right. Touch him, and I'll bring every charge in the book. Nothing. That's when I went straight to the sheriff. I filed a report for pet theft and criminal intimidation. In Texas, per Penal Code Par 42.092, unlawfully taking, holding, or harming someone's pet is a felony under cruelty to non-livestock animals if it involves harm or intimidation. Using the pet as leverage could also constitute extortion. Paraphy 31D-R01 and retaliation, par 36 or 6, and the text message enough for probable cause. The deputy took it seriously. You got any suspects? I looked him straight in the eye. Yeah, Karen. And whoever the hell is helping her. Within hours, I had flyers up, posted in every online lost pet group in a 100-mile radius, offering a reward and attaching a photo of Ranger in his favorite bandana. I didn't expect the tip to come from a teenage girl in a beat-up blue sedan. She pulled up to my gate at sunset, hesitating before stepping out, holding something tight to her chest. It was Ranger's collar. Are you James Walker? She asked. Yes. Where's my dog? Her eyes welled up. He's okay. I swear. I didn't know it was like this. She explained. 2 nights ago, a friend of her mom's dropped off a dog. Said it was temporary. Said it was to teach someone a lesson. The woman Karen. Of course it was. He cried all night, the girl said, wiping her eyes. I just couldn't not say something. I looked at her hard, not angry, just desperate. Is he still there? She nodded. We drove to her house 3 streets over. There, in a dimly lit garage, was Ranger curled up on a blanket, head on his paws. When he saw me, he barked once, then launched into a sprint, tail wagging like a wind turbine. I dropped to my knees. You're okay, buddy? You're okay? The girl stood back, crying softly. I just wanted to do the right thing. You did. I told her. You absolutely did. I called the sheriff again, this time with concrete proof. Karen had orchestrated the abduction. I had the collar handoff, the girl's witness statement, and the delivery timeline. I even had a voicemail Karen accidentally left on my phone, whispering about getting the furniture in before he's back. It wasn't a rogue act anymore. It was a conspiracy. That week, I showed up at the monthly HOA meeting. Karen didn't expect me. They were sipping coffee, fake plants in the corners, the usual clique laughing over landscaping votes. When I walked in, it went silent. Karen blinked. "James, I thought you hated meetings." "I do," I said, placing a thick folder on the table. "But I hate criminals more." Gasps. I distributed photos of Karen inside my home, the locksmith invoice in her name, the text messages about Ranger, the girl's signed affidavit, video screenshots from security footage. "This woman doesn't care about your HOA. I told the room she's using it as a front to steal land, silence homeowners, and kidnap animals." Karen laughed, nervously. "He's angry. He fabricated this to slander me." But then, the door opened, and in walked the sheriff. Not alone. Behind him was a deputy and a district attorney investigator. "Karen Simmons," the sheriff said. "You need to come with us." Her sunglasses fell to the floor. On what charges, she shrieked. Criminal trespass, filing a false report, pet theft, obstruction of justice. She screamed as they cuffed her right there in front of everyone. "You won't win. This isn't over." I looked her in the eye. "Oh, it's just getting started." But I was wrong, because that night, someone threw a brick through my kitchen window. Taped to it was a note. "You're next." When your enemy goes quiet, they're not defeated. They're just making room for someone worse. I thought it was over when they hauled Karen out in cuffs. The community was stunned. Neighbors whispered. The HOA board looked shaken. And for the first time in months, I slept without pacing the porch like a prison guard. But that peace lasted less than 24 hours. Because that night, a brick crashed through my kitchen window. And with it, a message. "You're next." The sheriff took it seriously, but they weren't hopeful. Could be a prank, could be a friend of hers. The deputy snapped photos, bagged the note, dusted for prints. "We'll check," he said. "But honestly, you've stirred up a lot of dust." James, he wasn't wrong. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on the porch with Ranger by my side, shotgun across my lap. But the silence wasn't peaceful anymore. It was full of questions, because Karen was in custody. So, who the hell threw that brick? The answer came in the form of two initials, HRR. At first, it was just a scribble on the note, but something about it stuck in my mind. The handwriting didn't match Karen's sharp, slanted scrawl. This was messier, rushed, deliberate. I scanned old HOA emails, meeting minutes, mailing lists. That's when I found her Heather Rowan vice secretary. Never spoke, never made motions, always sat next to Karen, the kind of person you forget until it's too late. I brought the name to Mandy, my private investigator. Her response: "Oh, hell." She pulled her laptop and started digging. Heather had no criminal record, no red flags, but she owned land, a lot of it, over 800 acres, all in parcels just outside HOA limits. Most registered under shell companies, some purchased from distressed sellers, others from families who moved after HOA pressure. It wasn't just a hunch anymore. This was a network, and I was standing in the last open lot between Heather's empire and her Redstone Hills development. Then came the motion alerts. 2:47 a.m., first at my southern fence, then the western edge, then the barn. I checked the feed. All cameras were offline. Power surge. No. Sabotage. I ran outside barefoot. Ranger growled low beside me. Spray painted across the barn door. "You're not safe here." Still dripping. They weren't playing anymore. This fell under Criminal Mischief Texas Penal Code, paragraph 28.3, and Terroristic Threat Penal Code, paragraph 22.7. If the intent was to coerce, harass, or intimidate a property owner, I reported it again, added it to the growing file. But I knew law enforcement was only going to follow the symptoms. I had to find the disease. That same week, Mandy uncovered something worse. Heather formed a committee inside the HOA, the Urban Expansion Task Force. They've been filing falsified zoning paperwork with a private engineering firm posing as a city agency. The kicker, that firm is owned by Heather's cousin. They'd created dummy documents, seals, and applications to make it look like the county had approved new development on land they didn't own. One of those maps had my land on it. I sent a cease and desist through my attorney, filed an emergency injunction, reinforced every camera, replaced every cable with encrypted hardwire, but Heather, she escalated again. I returned from the feed store one afternoon and smelled gasoline. My entire front porch was soaked. A gas can sat upright, half full. A single match rested on the handrail. It wasn't subtle. It was a threat, or a warning, or both. The sheriff's office responded fast this time. The deputy in charge had already seen enough of Heather's zoning scams. We're raiding the construction site tomorrow, and they did. The Redstone Hills site was shut down, heavy equipment confiscated, foreman arrested for falsified permits. But Heather, she was at a hotel across town, lawyering up. I thought maybe that was it. But then I got the call. 3 M, Travis, my neighbor, James, you need to come, now. I stepped outside and saw the sky glowing orange over my north pasture. My old tool shed was on fire. By the time I got there, it was gone. The fire department put it out, and the report was immediate arson, accelerant used, intentional. They found tire tracks leading to the back trail, and in the ashes a lighter engraved with the name Rowan. But by the time the warrant came down, Heather had vanished. 2 days later, another blow. My lawyer called. They're accusing you of setting the fire. I almost dropped the phone. What anonymous tip? They say you did it to destroy evidence. I laughed. Then I screamed, but this wasn't funny. This was legal misdirection muddying the waters. That night, Mandy showed up again. She had video security footage from a nearby gas station, Heather buying 2 gallons of gasoline, timestamp, 2 hours before the fire. Another clip showed her car leaving the area. She left a trail, Mandy said, and I already sent it to the sheriff. That's when Travis pulled into my driveway, white truck, headlights off. You need to see this. It was a letter, certified mail, signed by Heather. This confirms that Mr. James Walker has agreed to transfer ownership of parcel TX876431 to the Redstone Hills HOA. With my forged signature, she was trying to fake a land transfer to rush it through the county. We raced to the county clerk's office, arrived 10 minutes before closing. I slammed the file on the desk. That's a forged transfer. I'm the legal owner. The clerk compared signatures, pulled my deed, reviewed the video evidence. Then he stamped the form, rejected, under investigation. I exhaled for the first time in weeks, until a black SUV pulled into the lot. Heather stepped out, calm as ever, holding a federal-looking document. She walked up to me, slowly, like a final boss. When they can't beat you with rules, they try fire. When fire fails, they forge the law. When that fails, they disappear. Heather Rowan was arrested at sunset. The last time I saw her face, she wore no panic, no shame, just a glare look that said, "You got lucky. But I'll be back." But this wasn't luck. It was every camera I installed, every document I saved, every step I refused to back down from. And now, it was our turn to push back. The sheriff's office launched a full investigation the next morning. They executed search warrants on Heather's hotel room, her cousin's engineering firm, Karen's home, and the HOA's clubhouse records room. What they found enough evidence to put a dozen people in cuffs. The findings: over $2.3 million in redirected HOA funds, 8 cases of fraudulent land transfers, forged permits, secret shell companies tied to donation accounts, security invoices paid to private enforcers who harassed dissenting homeowners. Even the brick through my window, fingerprint matched to Douglas Matz, HOA treasurer, who swore he'd never gotten involved. Turns out, he was billing the HOA for paperwork processing while filing fake tax liens on empty lots. The hammer fell hard. The charges: racketeering Texas Penal Code, paragraph 71-2, forgery and fraud. Penal Code, paragraph 32.21, conspiracy to commit arson and property damage, impersonating government authority. Paragraph 37.11, theft of services. Paragraph 31.04. The district attorney built a state-level RICO case. Karen, Heather, Douglas, and 4 other HOA board members were indicted, and in a move no one expected. 2 of them flipped, turned state's witness. The courtroom was packed on arraignment day. News crews lined the sidewalk. One reporter whispered as I passed, "This is the biggest HOA corruption case in Texas history." The judge approved emergency orders to freeze HOA bank accounts, halt all construction permits under the Redstone Hills name, and remove the entire board pending trial for the first time in years. Clear Hollow Estates had no president, no fines, no Karen standing at porches with a clipboard. The silence was beautiful. Meanwhile, my lawyer pushed to seal the fate of my land once and for all. 3 months later, I got the envelope. Inside, the parcel designated TX876431 is permanently exempt from annexation or governance by any private association under local and state statute. Translation: no HOA ever stamped, signed, sealed. I hung it in a frame above my fireplace, right next to Ranger's leash. The HOA clubhouse was sold. The Redstone Hills construction equipment was auctioned to cover restitution. The bulldozed land ordered by court to be reforested at Heather Rowan's personal expense. It nearly bankrupted her. And yet, no one shed a tear. A few months later, I hosted a party, the first real gathering I ever held at the ranch. The sun was low, fire pit glowing, families came, neighbors who once stayed quiet now brought pies, guitars, their kids. Sarah, the one teacher who always believed me, arrived with fresh cornbread and a huge smile. Travis handed me a beer and said, "You didn't just win for yourself. You showed the rest of us we don't have to be afraid." We grilled under the stars, played old country songs. Someone brought a banjo, someone else brought fireworks, and somewhere around midnight, I stood quietly by the edge of the firelight, watching the people, the land, the peace, and I realized I didn't just save a ranch. I saved something we were all losing, the right to say this is mine. You don't get to take it. Ranger nudged my hand with his nose, wanting another marshmallow. I gave him one, maybe two. He earned it. Karen Simmons, 5 years probation, $150,000 $1,000 to restitution, 10-year ban from serving on any HOA or nonprofit board, Heather Rowan. 12 years suspended sentence, full asset forfeiture of development companies, permanent restriction from holding public contracts, required to pay $1, or $1 million in environmental restoration. Douglas Matz, 3 years jail, tax fraud charges pending. The rest scattered, silent, gone. 6 months later, I got a letter from the DA's office. It said, "In recognition of your cooperation, evidence preservation, and civic determination, we thank you." That meant more than I thought it would. I still live on the ranch, still wake up early, still walk the fence line with Ranger at my side. But now, when I see a clipboard, I don't flinch. I smile, because I know they came for me with forms, fines, fire, and fraud, and I sent them home with nothing but a court summons and a criminal record. "You've won nothing," she said. "This land was never yours to begin with." She held up the paper, Notice of Federal Eminent Domain from the Federal Development Trust Commission. I read it, letterhead, stamp, signature, but something was off. "What agency is this?" She smiled sweetly. "One with friends in Washington." Mandy stepped in, snatched the paper, scanned it. "This agency doesn't exist. This isn't a federal seal. It's a scanned county emblem, photoshopped." She held it up to the clerk. "You want to call the FBI, or should we?" The clerk stepped away. Heather blinked, eyes darting. "This is a misunderstanding. You'll all regret this." Then, the sheriff's cruiser pulled in. Deputies stepped out. "Heather Rowan, you are under arrest for attempted fraud forgery, impersonating a federal agency conspiracy to commit land theft." As they cuffed her, she hissed, "The HOA owns this town. You'll be buried before you ever build anything." I didn't flinch. "Let's see who's holding the shovel." She broke into my home, kidnapped my dog, and tried to burn my land to the ground. But she underestimated one thing I fight back harder. This wasn't just about a house. It was about principle, property, and the kind of justice no HOA rulebook can stop. Have you ever dealt with a nightmare neighbor, a power-hungry HOA? Drop a comment below. Where are you from? Do you live under an HOA, And what would you do if someone tried to take your land with a clipboard and a lie?